Welcome to Conversations, a weekly audiocast featuring interviews with leading investment strategists and recognized financial professionals. Brought to you by the Market Technicians Association.
This is Conversations, the official MTA Podcast Series, and today's guest is Dr. Jason Williams. According to Williams, you should match your trading style to your personality. To become consistently successful, you will need to find your own unique set of mental lenses to look at the market through. Dr. Jason Williams is a Johns Hopkins Hospital-trained psychiatrist. He has subspecialty training in psychosomatic medicine and was taught how to use and interpret the world's foremost personality test, the Neo-PI-RTM, by one of the co-inventors of the tool. Dr. Williams lives in North Virginia and practices both inpatient and outpatient psychiatry there. Some of his patients and clients are high net worth individuals who seek to maximize their wealth through better mental health. Welcome to the program, Jason.
Hi, Lance. Thanks for having me.
Now, you recently published a book called The Mental Edge in Trading that you co-wrote with your father, legendary trader Larry Williams. Tell me what it was like growing up in the Williams house.
Well, Lance, that's a great question because my dad's more than just a trader. He's involved in so many other things. So it's a very varied upbringing. I grew up with a dad who trades markets, but also trains professional boxers and lives an Indiana Jones lifestyle as well, going around the world doing treasure hunts and stuff. So it was a phenomenal exposure to sort of pursuing whatever your dreams are. And so I look at my growing up with my father as he being a role model in so many aspects, in everything that he does, he pursues. And so that's being exposed to that. I obviously I saw, market books, before the computers were really popular, the market books all over the house, and, learned to, read them. And I noticed right away how he came up with my name. I looked at the bottom of the chart books and I saw all the months listed out, and there was June, August, September, October, November, and I saw my name there, and I thought, oh, okay, boy, he's really into these market charts. So there was a strong influence of trading growing up, and I just feel very, very blessed to have my father to be my father.
Did you ever consider following in your father's footsteps, taking a career in the markets?
Well, Lance, I did briefly, actually. I worked for my dad for a couple of years back in 93 and 94, I think. And that was, I worked for his newsletter and his company. And, that was a great experience in itself, and I admire a lot of father-son or family-owned businesses. But my father taught me also bigger things, and that is to pursue your own dreams and your own aspirations. And so there came a point where I needed to do that and not just try to follow in my father's footsteps, but to make some of my own. And he has been a huge inspiration and support in numerous ways ever since then. And so, yes, I have, and it's something that I'm asked all the time, like, well, why don't you do what your dad does? And I'm not my dad, but he's been a huge influence and support all along the way. So I'm lucky to have my footsteps next to his at this point.
Now, you followed your own dreams, and it led you in the direction of medicine. How and when did you decide that medical school was the right path for you?
I had started off, before medical school, I had opened a company and was involved in doing some import and export trading with China, and I was sort of involved in trading with China for nearly a decade. And so I had a second career, or first career before I went off to medical school. And and so I did that, had a lot of fun doing that, living in China, learning to speak Chinese and traveling back and forth and knowing the culture, and that was a great experience. But I loved it, but there was still something missing. And what it was I didn't feel like I was, even though I was having a great time and it was fun. I hear people say, oh, I'm so lucky I do what I like to do for my job. And for me, that wasn't quite enough. It wasn't just a matter of whether or not I like the job I'm doing, but whether I feel like I'm doing the job that I'm supposed to be doing, like what my calling is, or what I'm, best, as a tool on this planet, what I would be best set out to do. I started to reflect on that more, and I began to realize that, it's really fun going to do, business off in China, but it's not I don't think what my destiny was. And I started to reflect about it. I was working in the pharmaceutical industry, doing a lot of trade between China and America, doing research, and that kind of started to get me exposed to medical research in the medical field. And I had some doctors working for me, and started talking to them about the immune system and all kinds of anatomy and then medicines, and it just started opening up in that regards. And that's kind of how it all started, where I started to see the medical field and the caring for other people who are sick, and being in that role, I just started to get involved in it. And I had a family member who was very sick, and I personally was exposed to that, and it was like a huge magnet. And it just felt the difference now is not only do I love my job as a doctor and a psychiatrist, but I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so that's an even deeper feeling of just an exciting job.
Well, let's transition to the book. You said it's been nearly 20 years since you worked with your father, but you co-wrote this book together, The Mental Edge in Trading. How did this book even come about?
Right. So, I eventually transitioned and went off to medical school and went to Hopkins and did my training in psychiatry up in Baltimore. And it was in that process that I learned more about the human mind and how it works. And it's just sort of I think a natural topic of conversation between a father who's involved in trading the markets and a son who now is studying human behaviors and emotions, and that there would be some sort of overlay. And so it really did start off with just some casual conversations of my father asking me, well, what do you think makes a great market trader a great market trader? And of course, I'd never thought about that because I'm not first and foremost an investor or a trader. And so, but it got me thinking. And as I was in residency and training at Hopkins with literally the most eminent personality researchers and people who really research this stuff, I started thinking, maybe there's a way we can kind of look into this. And so I started looking into there's a body of research out there that looks at some of the personality traits and emotions of investors in general, but that's not what my dad had asked me. He asked me, well, what do you think makes a great market trader a great market trader? And so, it was on a beach that, he lives down in the Virgin Islands, and it was, we came up with this plan, like, well, what if we, got together a group of traders that my dad has known for many years or decades, really, who've been consistently successful, and gave them a standardized personality test, and really tried to sort out if there are any common personality traits that they share, or how their personality traits get involved with their trading life. And so that's where the idea came from. It's almost sort of a natural progression of, or really a natural father-son project that took shape. And it's been a great experience for me to be more involved in a little bit in my dad's world, and for him to be a little bit more involved in my world, our careers. And so it's been a great project. We talked about it. He's share our own findings or things that are in the press or whatever. And it's really what started off as a father-son project eventually turned into a book. McGraw-Hill, really loved the idea and of the printing the findings of our studies. And it's just kind of one thing unfolded. I never thought in a million years that I would be an author. That's my dad's job, right? I'm trying to form my own footprints, and now here I am, with a book to my name. And obviously, I don't think this book would have probably been published without sort of this great, collaboration between my dad and I. It was just sort of a perfect fit.
Sure. Well, let's dig into the book a little bit. Why don't you just tell me about the book?
Sure. Well, like I said, there's already been some research done that's kind of not very extensive, and also sort of more focused on just the general traders at large. And of course, there are all kinds of books out there, psychobabble or not, that talk about sort of the emotional or psychological aspects of trading. And that's not what we were looking to do. There's you can go to your bookstore and find a whole bookcase full of books, or you could fill up your Kindle with books like that. But what we wanted to do again was to really do some research on these traders, and so we got together a couple dozen traders and tested their personalities, and so the book basically goes into what those traits are that they share, and sometimes. It's not only that these successful traders share some traits, but that there's some predictive values into whether your trait is high or low. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is you don't have to have a specific personality trait. There are all kinds of personalities that can turn into successful traders. But there were some things that they shared in common, and I think that it's really important for individuals to know that, because what we found is that our research is a little bit different than when personality tests have been given to sort of general trader populations, that there are some differences. And so the whole concept is, what can anybody, no matter what your personality trait is, learn about these successful traders and how to adapt your personality traits. And that's the whole concept of not only this book, but just personality traits in general, is that you really can't change your personality. You can adapt to it. So it's a matter of you learning who you are and what your strengths and your weaknesses are, and how they apply either to trading or other aspects of your life, and how to adapt them to become more successful at what you do, whatever your endeavors are. And so we use this personality test. Let me just, the TM that you mentioned, it's actually just called the NEOPIR, or NEO is how we usually, the TM is just trademarked, but we usually just refer to it as the NEO, so we'll only just call it that. It's a personality inventory that looks at the 5 main human personality traits, and then under those 5 main traits, there are a total of 30 specific subtraits, or what we call facets. And so we looked at all of these personality traits, and a main concept that should really be put forth right away is that personality traits are all what we call, researchers or doctors would call dimensional, that everybody has them. It's a matter of where you are on the spectrum. And I've spoken, now that I've spoken to a lot of traders, and a lot of people have done personality tests before, and when I typically ask them, well, which one have you do, they usually say like the Briggs-Meyer. And those personality tests are based on the same principle as this personality test, but they don't get into sort of the where you are on the spectrum. They just put you into a category. And so they don't say like how extreme this trait is versus that trait, and how these certain traits overlap. And that's what this personality, the NEO, does that. It's not, the Myers-Briggs is what I jokingly say. It's great if you're looking to do some online dating, but if you want to do online trading and you really want to know yourself a little bit better, maybe you should, use the more validated and more detailed personality test, which really kind of ranks you or compares you to the whole population of people out there. And it lets you see, are you average or high or low, or very high or very low, and where on the spectrum you are. And like I said, there are some specific traits that we found, and we can certainly get into those if that's where you want to go next, or if you have a different question, where do you want to go, Lance?
Well, you spend a fair amount of time talking about the neuroticism category,
Right.
and specifically even the anxiety components of that. Right. I know we don't have time to go through all 30, but
Right.
You, at one point, you say that fear is good, but don't confuse fear with anxiety. So
Right.
Maybe could you talk about this component a little bit more?
Sure. I'm going to have to, this is going to be very broad brushstrokes. If people are interested, obviously they can, buy a copy of the book, or even can just, read more about neuroticism online. But neuroticism, in a nutshell, is one of the 5 main personality traits. And it basically is the tendency for somebody to experience negative emotions under stressful times. Again, there are 6 sub-traits to that main personality trait of neuroticism, and one of them, what's considered the first one, N1, neuroticism 1, is the anxiety trait, and that is under stressful times, whether or not you feel a lot of anxiety. Now, everybody feels anxiety under stressful times. That's not the question. The question is, in comparison to the general population, do you feel an average amount? Do you feel it very strongly, or do you feel it much more lightly? And that was one of the main findings that's in our book, is amongst these successful traders, they all have very low trait anxiety scores. And that was very different than some of the other studies that have been out there that looked at just sort of traders in general that show that they have very average anxiety scores, or sometimes even high anxiety scores. And so I think that's definitely one of the main findings of our research. It's not the only one, but I would say it's probably the most important one. It's the most consistent finding amongst all these successful traders. They invariably are very low in anxiety. And I think that what that means is that that under stressful market conditions, they're able to, the logical part of their brain is able to stay in control and do the right thing, because the sort of the emotional or anxiety component isn't as strong as it is for perhaps other traders who might impulsively, or not impulsively, but anxiously make a decision that later they come to regret. And so that was definitely a main finding. Now, the difference between anxiety and fear, I think it's, we use those two words almost interchangeably, sort of in the colloquial sense. Anxiety and fear are pretty much the same thing. So I think what the way I would try to put this is, again, anxiety is more of a trait of when you're under stressful situations, whether you feel incredibly anxious. Whereas when we're referring to fear in the book, I'm referring more to a different personality trait, which is not even one of the neuroticism traits. It's more along the lines of one of the conscientiousness traits of how confident somebody is, and how confident they are of themselves versus whether their confidence level is low or not. And so that's what I'm referring to there. I've got a puppy barking here, so hold on a second. All right, hopefully the puppy stays out of our conversation here. It's more semantics than anything else. As far as fear or anxiety, I wouldn't get too stressed over that. I think what's more important to understand is that anxiety or fear, Lance, can actually be used to your advantage, and that there are times when you want to feel some anxiety or some fear. If you don't have any anxiety, that's probably not a good thing. It's a matter of being able to temper your anxiety, and more importantly, be able to feel for yourself how your anxiety is affecting the rational part of your brain. And so that's another sort of core kind of finding, is that it's of our book is that is really being able to not squash or totally put out the fire, but actually to learn to use anxiety to your advantage. All of the successful traders that we talk to, they don't tell me that they don't feel anxiety. They still do, but they've learned to use it to their advantage. And I just think that because they're low in anxiety, trait anxiety, it's just easier for them to do that. Whereas people who have very high levels, it's just hard for them to do that. And so in the book, I give a lot of examples, and we don't have time to go into it here, but I give a lot of examples of how people you can't lower your anxiety score, but you can learn to live with your anxiety and deal with it better. And so in the book, there are a lot of suggestions based off of my interviews. We didn't just give them the personality test. We also interviewed these traders and asked them, how do you deal with your anxiety when you're trading? So there's a bunch of advice, and a number of the traders actually agreed to have chapters devoted exclusively to them, so that you can kind of get into their mind's eye. So I really appreciate the traders who allowed us to use their names and get into their personality traits. That was
Right. Yeah, it was a lot. It was like getting two books in one, having the interviews with the traders. That was a nice bonus. Now, the book is really tied to the Neo personality inventory. How can somebody get your book and take the personality inventory?
Yeah, well, books nowadays, you can basically download it, or you can go to Amazon or just about anywhere online. I'm sure there are other, I've seen it in bookstores as well. But it's hardly on the New York Times bestseller at this point. But it's out there. You can go to Amazon or you can download it. So it's not hard to get the book. Now, but the other question of how to get this personality test done, pretty much any psychologist or psychiatrist who does any kind of what we call psychometric testing, like IQ testing, personality testing, they should be able to help you get this done. If you want to contact me, I can help you get it done through the mail. It's an easy process, so I can certainly help people out if they're interested in taking the test. I don't think that you have to take the test to get benefit out of this book. I think that actually what I would say is we all kind of know what our personality traits are. The test just kind of helps you see like where on the spectrum, how far, it just kind of crystallizes our ability to really understand ourselves a little bit better. So usually there aren't major shockers when they get the results of the test back, but it's actually through the understanding and talking with them that we really understand how their personality traits are affecting their trading. So I also do consultations with traders if they're interested in doing that, where we not only do the personality test, but also talk more in depth with them about how their personality traits can either get in the way or how they can change their trading style a little bit to better adapt to their personality traits. So I do that as well. It's definitely not, it's not my business. My business is I'm a psychiatrist. First and foremost, I'm not a trader, but I do have a lot of knowledge in trading and do investments. But by no means is that my primary endeavor in life. But it's something that I really enjoyed working with my dad and the traders, not only the successful traders that we look at in the book, but other traders who've come forward and said, I want to know more about myself, and I think that. Of everybody that I've done this on, even the successful traders, they all learn something more about themselves. And again, no huge shockers, but it just kind of crystallizes it for them a little bit more, puts things into perspective. And even successful traders in the book, they say, wow, I've had huge breakthroughs just by doing this. And it really, I don't know if they feel like they're huge breakthroughs. I don't know if they really are. Maybe they are. But I think it just helps. It just helps crystallize it and helps like really put it on paper. Like, yeah, that's why I keep, getting out of my trade too early, because it just reinforces it, helps them understand themselves better, and that's what successful living is all about, Lance, and including trading, is understanding yourself better, getting to know yourself and where you go wrong, and how, like I said, using your strengths for your advantage as well.
Okay. Well, Jason, our time is gone. Is there anything you would like to add before we go?
Well, Lance, as time went by fast, I think that on the MTA website, I think that there's somewhere on there's a link and to a session I did at the MTA annual symposium a month or two ago in New York. And so I believe that people can have access there if they want to get a little bit more. And we just didn't have much time to get into the real details here. But if you want to get a little bit more in-depth into it, I encourage you to go online and check that out. You'll get a little bit more sense of what the book's about and what some of the findings are. And again, more than happy to, if anyone wants their personality tested or talk more about their trading life, they can shoot me an email. I don't know if you want me to list my email address here, but
sure, go ahead.
That to you. It's pretty straightforward. It's the word email, the word doctor spelled out, and then the letter J @yahoo.com. So just email Dr. J at Yahoo. That's my personal email. And so this is just a little side project. This is not, I don't take credit cards. I don't, no fancy advertising or anything. There's no website to go to. It's just a fun project if anybody wants to be involved with this. We do have a couple new book ideas coming out. Our book has been published now in Chinese and Japanese, and now the publisher is looking at some other book ideas that I have as well. And so if anybody wants to be involved, shoot me an email.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for your time today, Jason.
You're most welcome, Lance.
Today's guest has been Dr. Jason Williams, and that concludes today's MTA podcast. From LexingtonCapitalLLC.com, I'm Lance McDonald, together with recording engineer Shane Skwarek at the MTA, reminding you that price is always right.